morning, my name is Alec. The podcast today is about the knights and chivalry in medieval times. You are listening to PBS.org. So now let your mind bring you back to the Middle Ages from its beginning to the 15th century in Europe. All of you, I think, have already heard about knights. You may have even read them from books, or even have seen them as characters in movies. But who were the knights? How did they achieve that position in their society? What code of behavior were they supposed to follow? Let's begin to answer these questions. A knight was expected to have the courage, strength, and talents in war. To do that, knights had to keep up to date with their strength every day. Knights were also supposed to show respect for the ladies of the court, especially for the wife of the lord under whom they served as knights. How did this path begin for a young boy of a noble family who was going to become a knight? When he was about 7 years old, he was sent to live at the castle or the manor of a great lord. At this point, he was called a page. There, he learned how to behave properly and how to ride and take excellent care of a horse. When he was a teenager, maybe about 14 years old, if he had shown the right behavior and abilities, he became an apprentice to a knight. At this stage, he was called a squire. He was a squire to his knight. He took care of his knights, horses, and armor, and even accompanied his knight in battle. He had to be able to use a bow and know how to carve meat. If he did all of those things well, he himself would finally become a knight. By this time, maybe he was between 20 and 21 years old. Knights on horses could reach speeds up to 60 miles per hour. A knight's armor had more than one layer. The knight had a helmet to protect his head from damage, a wooden shield, and a heavy sword. A knight had protection everywhere. To become a knight, he had to have the budget for the armor and weapons. He had to pay for it himself. A knight could also gain possessions and money by sacking a town. The knight would also defend the peasants on his land while the peasants worked and grew food for him. However, land wasn't always available everywhere for the knights, so in some places the king would give the knight money. With respect to fighting, a knight could decline a fight against another knight, but then he would have to pay the king some money. Knights would often fight against each other in tournaments. Medieval tournaments were used to refresh the skills needed to control horse and weapons. When Charlemagne and his successors built up the armies in the 8th and 19th centuries, they copied the training that the Roman armies and the Persian armies had used. Teams of knights on horses armed with javelins would take turns charging at each other. They would then turn back in the other direction. By the late 14th century, knights lived in comfortable manor houses rather than cold and uncomfortable castles as they had done previously. Finally, I would like to talk a little about the code of chivalry. The idea of chivalry refers to the knight's code of behavior. It was constructed of different chores and jobs that the knight had to do and follow. A central part of the code was that the duty that all of the knights had to show respect for women, especially the ladies of the court who would take their offerings. Another part of the code was to never deny a challenge from somebody who was an equal. Knights were supposed to defend the weak. At the end of training for knighthood, the knights would have a ceremony. A knight could be praying for hours. This respect for religion was also part of their code. This will be all for today, but I hope you learned something you didn't know about medieval knights and chivalry. Tune in next week at the same time when I'll be talking about the role of the Catholic Church in medieval times. You can send me questions on my homepage at Twitter, AlexHistoryAlive.